What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I want to talk about something we all take for granted when we're playing games. All these games that we love of all different genres, from all different developers and all different styles and themes and whatever it is, something we completely overlook 99% of the time and just take it for granted or as a given. And that is games and their heads-up display and their UI, or otherwise known as their HUD, and their user interface. Now, before we go any further, I just want to illustrate my point here by asking you guys, when is the last time you noticed your HUD or your UI? Now, not just, oh wow, this is mind-blowing and cool and whatnot, but when's the last time you actually took a second, not just to read, oh, I have 94 HP left, or I have 26 bullets left, but when's the actual last time you stopped and said, oh wow, that's a cool looking HUD, or you actually thought about it? And at the same time, when was the last time you were actually impressed by one? Because this is something we usually just take for granted in pretty much every game nowadays. Obviously, every game has to have a menu, has to have possibly an inventory system, or has to have something to show us what we need to know. Be it as something as basic as a health bar, or numbers, or numbered health, or numbered bullets in a gun, or whatever it is. There's all sorts of stuff, and this can be very, very mundane. But at the same time, it can also be done very, very right and add so much to the game. There are a couple of basics that an interface or a HUD or whatever has to actually do, and one of those things is it has to be fairly accessible. Now, what I mean by that is everything needs to be laid out properly and easy to use. We all know that one game that we play, whatever it is, it's probably a different game for you than it is for me, but we all know we have those one, maybe two, or if not even more games that we played them, we might even enjoy the game, but all the time we're thinking, wow, this HUD is absolute dirt. This user interface, this menu system is absolute shite. I'm sure we've all played a game like that. And it can be mildly frustrating. But usually what actually happens is every so often, and I really do mean this as so often as in once every couple of years, a new game or a new series or whatever will completely flip it on its head. It will do something completely out of the box, something completely different, and it will be very impressive. Now, there are all different styles of menus and HUDs and user interfaces and whatever, and usually they're 99% of the time at least tailor-made for the individual game. When you look at the style of something, say Life is Strange and the whole college kid aesthetic and the hipster aesthetic and the, let's call it, art aesthetic, when you look at the HUD in the game as well as the menus and whatnot, you can see that that illustrates it perfectly and it fits really well. But at the same time, in something like Life is Strange, is it completely mind-blowing and completely elevates it to another level? No, it's just fitting in and trying to be a little bit more immersive. It's the same with the likes of any of the Arkham Batman games. Granted, the communicator that shows up like this is only a minor part of it, and it's not really the overall menu and whatnot, but it works into the story well, and it uses the, we'll call it a little bit of the UI to progress the story and illustrate the point that gets across. And then you look at something like Borderlands. Now, Borderlands 2 here has a decent amount of menus and whatnot, and they're all pretty accessible. They're all fairly easy to use, at least once you get the hang of it, because, well, at the start, the whole equipment thing can be a little bit awkward. But once you get used to it, it's all very functional. Everything is laid out in a kind of quirky way because, well, it's Borderlands. But at the same time, you look at what's in there, you're looking at one screen for your quests, one for your map, one for your inventory, one for your actual character class and skills, and the other for your additional challenges and badass tokens and whatnot. Pretty functional, and not too convoluted. But then you look at a game like Nier Automata. The actual in-game UI isn't too bad. It can get a little bit busy because of the amount of enemies on the screen and whatnot. But in my opinion, the actual in-game menus can be a bit much. Granted, there's different tabs for everything, like say Borderlands, but it seems that there's way too much going on in some of these tabs. And then you compare that to something like a game like Skyrim. Granted, the game is 7 years old at this point and the menu system is a little bit, I won't say archaic, but a little bit convoluted. Granted, there's obviously short keys and whatnot to get away from that, but the Skyrim system is a very basic menu in my opinion. Then again, that's probably to be expected from the most basic Elder Scrolls game there is. Speaking of which, let's take a look at an older one, a more PC-focused menu system, in which we have Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. You look at all the information we can have on this screen at once, and it's still not overpowering in my opinion. There's a lot of good use of space, everything is well laid out and clearly defined. It's also completely scalable. You can grab each and every window and shape it to your own desire and lay it out wherever you want. Arguably a perfect system, or at least a near perfect system, because you can customize it just the way you want. And it's also highly functional. It gives you what you want, details, you know exactly where it is, etc. Now, of course, there's other games too that have their own quirky versions and whatnot. Let's look at Okami HD that I'm currently playing. The menu in this game not only looks gorgeous, but it fits in perfectly. It's not just a standard pause menu with a small list or anything. It brings up a nice oriental fan, and every single thing in this menu, be it the icons or just the overall tabs, are all perfectly lined up with the aesthetic of the game. Another game where this is actually blended in perfectly is Persona 5, the best Persona game. Now, I've spoken in depth and in detail before about just how stylish Persona 5 is, and that every single facet of the game oozes character and vibe. But let's just quickly take a look at some of these. This is the main in-game menu system, the standard battle UI, and even the standard exploration UI, coupled in with a little bit of cut-down UI with a little bit of dialogue thrown in. It's things like Persona 5 and whatnot that really hammer it home just how much they can add when it comes to immersion and atmosphere into a game. Now, I've been talking about some of these for a little while now, and chances are some of you are wondering, why hasn't he mentioned this game, or why hasn't he mentioned that game? Well, there's a reason for that, because like I mentioned much earlier in the video, there are every so often a couple of games that come along maybe once every 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, and then they completely blow you away when it comes to their UI. Now, having said all that, I'm a big fan of sci-fi tech and quirkiness to an extent, if you will, as well as a big fan of the postmodern design style, the kind of sci-fi deal, something like you'd see in Detroit Become Human, for example. And yes, that is why this video is being made, but we'll get to that now in a second. Because the last time I remember being blown away by a UI, believe it or not, was actually Dead Space. Remember when you were controlling Isaac and then all of this popped up? Everything in game was being done at the same time. It was all live, and how it moved, how it was in position, how the camera could rotate around it at the same time while all the action was going on, while you were doing this, that and the other. That was extremely impressive, and basically no game has done something similar since. But it's not just like about menus like we've just seen with Dead Space. It's not just about the pause screen like we've seen with Persona. But let's go back to Detroit Become Human just for a second. I absolutely love the postmodern style, the sci-fi twist that's put on this. Not just with the menus and whatnot, but the overall interface, and I hesitate to even call it the HUD in-game. Because it will pop up and your objectives will just be floating, and they will be pretty much static versus where you're actually walking, the camera's going around, and everything that almost feels like vector lines. It just meshes in absolutely perfectly, and I'm a huge fan of that. Both from an aesthetic point of view as well as an immersion point of view. Like I said at the start of the video, a bad UI can be frustrating as fuck, but a great UI elevates a game. It gives it that certain twist, it gives it the extra bit of immersion, that je ne sais quoi. And it's something I feel like a lot of developers might overlook nowadays. As well as gamers, we overlook it too, we take it for granted. Sure, coming up with a revolutionary or groundbreaking kind of menu or UI is not an easy task. But when it's done right, boy is it done right. Now, just before I round out the video here, it actually annoys me at one point, simply because there was another game I played recently that had a style of UI or style of HUD very similar to what we see in Detroit Become Human, but for the life of me I can't actually remember what it was. I know LA Noire has a decent one too, but I know that's not the game I'm thinking of. So guys, let me know in the comments section below what you think of all of the stuff we've discussed in this video. All the cool UIs, all the cool HUDs, be it in games that I've listed here, games you've played, games you haven't played but you've seen, games that you love the HUD and the UI and the aesthetic in, or games that have a UI or a menu system or whatever that has absolutely drove you to the edge of frustration and wanted to pull your hair out. Let me know all that good stuff in the comments section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not press that subscribe button and even turn on the notification bell. Granted, YouTube still probably won't send you all the notifications for the live streams and new videos and whatnot, but hey, at least you can say you tried, right? As always everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.